When did a pot of meat and peppers become worth fighting over? Was it somewhere on those dusty cattle trails where hungry cowboys argued over whose cook made the best grub? How did those campfire disputes grow into events that now draw thousands of spectators? And why would anyone travel hundreds of miles just to watch people stir pots of chili? You probably wouldn't recognize that early trail food as championship chili. Back then it was survival food, tough beef and wild peppers, whatever kept cowboys fed on the long trek north. Those first informal competitions weren't about trophies or glory. They were about tired men claiming their outfit's cook wasn't trying to poison them, at least not on purpose. This journey through chili competition history will reveal how working-class trail food transformed into theatrical championships worth millions in charity donations. As the story unfolds from dusty cattle drives to modern cook-off circuits, your thoughts might start to drift like campfire smoke, settling into something warm and restful, just right for easing into sleep. Here's something to consider. Subscribing means more of these savory historical journeys. Drop a comment about your take on the Great Beans debate. Are you a purist or a rebel? Take this moment to dim your screen a notch, arrange those pillows behind your head, and let your breathing find its natural rhythm. You're riding with a cattle drive in 1874, somewhere between San Antonio and Abilene. The dust hasn't settled all day, coating your throat, making you dream of anything wet and flavorful. Then you hear it, the chuck wagon's triangle bell announcing supper. Charles Goodnight's 1866 invention, the chuck wagon, revolutionized trail cooking, but what emerged from those mobile kitchens varied wildly. Evidence suggests that these trail cooks used dried beef when fresh ran out, wild chilies gathered along the route, onions if they were lucky, and whatever stretched the meal to feed hungry cowboys. Some added coffee grounds, others threw in wild herbs, each cook developing their own approach. The competition element, while not documented in formal records, seems almost inevitable when you consider the dynamics. Different outfits crossing paths at river fords, cowboys naturally comparing their meals, boasting about their cook's superior skills. These informal rivalries probably started as simple arguments. Our cookie's chili could strip paint. That's nothing, ours actually moves on its own. Honestly, after weeks of the same food, any variation probably seemed worth defending. Historians debate whether these trail stews deserve the name chili at all. Some argue they were closer to basic beef stews with peppers. Others point to Mexican vaquero influence bringing authentic chili preparation methods to the trail. The scholarly consensus suggests, though evidence remains fragmentary, that what we call Texas chili emerged from this multicultural mixing pot, quite literally. Here's the quirky part. According to frontier journals, some cooks believed adding a horseshoe to the pot while cooking brought good luck. Others insisted on stirring only clockwise, claiming it made the meat more tender. One documented account from 1882 describes a cook who sang to his chili, though whether this improved the flavor remains unverified. The mainstream historical fact is clear. Trail drives employed thousands of men between 1867 and 1885. Each drive lasted months, requiring mobile food preparation that could feed 10 to 15 cowboys twice daily. The chuck wagon cook ranked just below the trail boss in importance, earning $30 to $40 monthly compared to regular cowboys' $25 to $30. You watch as different cultural traditions blend around those campfires. Mexican vaqueros teaching Anglo cooks about pepper preparation. African American cowboys contributing spicing techniques from their own traditions. German immigrants in Texas adding their sausage-making knowledge. This cultural fusion, documented in numerous trail histories, created countless regional variations. Trail cooks guarded their methods jealously. Some accounts describe cooks walking miles from camp to gather specific wild peppers, refusing to reveal locations. Others carried secret spice pouches, treating their contents like gold, which on the frontier they practically were. One story, possibly apocryphal but often repeated, tells of a cook who slept with his spice box under his bedroll, trusting no one. The stakes were higher than just bragging rights. A cook with a reputation for good chili could demand higher wages. Cowboys might choose which outfit to join based on the cook's reputation. Ranch owners competed for the best cooks, knowing that satisfied cowboys meant successful drives. Some historians suggest, though concrete evidence is limited, that this economic pressure drove innovation in trail cooking. By the 1880s, the railroad's expansion was ending the Great Trail Drive era. Those chuck wagon cooks began settling in growing Texas towns. Some opened restaurants, others found work in hotels. They brought their recipes, their rivalries, and their pride. In San Antonio particularly, something extraordinary was beginning in the public plazas. The competition spirit born around those chuck wagon fires was about to transform. The chili queens were preparing to turn simple food vending into nightly theatrical battles, but their story waits in tomorrow's shadows, where the plaza lights begin to flicker. You're walking through San Antonio's Military Plaza on a warm evening in 1885, and the air carries something that makes you stop mid-step. It's not just the smell of roasted chilies and simmering beef. It's the sound of laughter, singing, wooden spoons banging against iron pots like dinner bells calling the faithful. The chili queens have arrived. These women, mostly Mexican American, transformed food vending into something approaching performance art. Every evening from the 1880s through 1943, they'd set up their makeshift stands in the plazas. Each queen commanded her own territory, her own following, her own reputation to defend. Historical records from the San Antonio Express describe scenes of 50 or more stands competing for customers, each decorated with colorful lanterns, tables covered in oilcloth, and the queens themselves dressed in their finest clothes. The competition between queens was fierce but unspoken, at least officially. You'd see them watching each other from the corners of their eyes, noting whose tables filled first, whose customers returned night after night. According to documented accounts from the period, Regular customers would defend their chosen queen's honor as zealously as any knight. Arguments about whose chili reigned supreme could apparently escalate into shoving matches, though the queens themselves maintained dignified aloofness. Here's what made these women remarkable. They weren't just selling food. They were creating an entire experience. Newspaper accounts from the 1890s describe queens who would flirt with customers, tell fortunes between servings, sing traditional songs while stirring their pots. One queen, known as Sadie according to a 1902 article, though her real name was probably Esperanza, would dance a little jig every time she served a bowl, claiming it blessed the meal. The mainstream historical fact is well documented. The chili queens operated continuously from at least 1880 until the San Antonio Health Department shut them down in 1943, citing sanitation concerns. They served a dish called chili con carne, typically priced at 10 cents a bowl, with bread and water included. Some historians estimate, based on contemporary accounts, that on busy nights the plaza might serve over 1,000 customers. But evidence suggests the competition went deeper than just customer counts. Each queen guarded her recipe like a state secret. Some added chocolate. Others used specific combinations of dried chilies. One documented account from 1895 describes a queen who would arrive at the plaza 2 hours early, just to prepare her special pepper paste away from prying eyes. Makes you wonder what she was hiding in that mixture. The scholarly debate centers on whether the chili queens actually invented San Antonio chili or were simply popularizing an existing dish. Some historians argue these women were carrying on traditions from Mexican street vendors. Others contend they created something uniquely Texan by adapting recipes for American palates. The prevailing theory suggests, though definitive proof remains elusive, that the queens modified traditional Mexican dishes to create what became known as San Antonio chili. You watch as the evening progresses. The competition intensifies without anyone acknowledging it exists. Queens start offering free tastes, an extra piece of bread, a prettier smile, anything to draw customers from neighboring stands. Regular patrons knew the unwritten rules. You picked a queen and stayed loyal, unless her chili disappointed. Then switching allegiances became a public drama worthy of an opera. The quirky detail that survives in multiple accounts. Some queens believed in chili superstitions that would make modern cooks laugh. Never stir counterclockwise on Tuesdays. Add salt with your left hand for luck. One queen reportedly refused to cook during thunderstorms, claiming lightning soured the peppers. Whether she really believed this or just wanted nights off during bad weather, we'll never know. Contemporary observers often mention the theatrical nature of these nightly gatherings. Frank Bushik, a traveling writer, described in 1898 how each queen maintains her own court of admirers, dispensing both chili and charm in carefully measured portions. The plaza became San Antonio's original dinner theater, where the drama was as important as the meal. The economic impact was significant. These women supported entire families with their chili sales. Some successful queens employed assistants, usually daughters or nieces learning the trade, creating dynasties of chili vendors that lasted generations. Tax records from the period, though incomplete, suggest the most successful queens earned more than many shop clerks or factory workers. Musicians would wander between the stands, serenading diners for tips. Street performers added to the carnival atmosphere. But the queens remained the stars, each one a small business owner, an entertainer, and a fierce competitor, even if the competition was never officially acknowledged. They'd smile at each other across the plaza, all while secretly hoping their rivals' pots would run empty first. The cultural mixing happening at these stands was remarkable. German immigrants from the hill country discovered Mexican spices. Cowboys from the ranges learned to appreciate city-style cooking. Businessmen rubbed shoulders with laborers, all united by their devotion to a particular queen's recipe. Some social historians argue, though this might be overstating things, that the chili queens helped integrate San Antonio society one bowl at a time. By the 1920s, the queens faced increasing pressure from city officials concerned about modernization and sanitation. They were forced to use enclosed carts, then regulated to specific areas, then licensed and inspected. The spontaneous nightly competition became regulated, controlled, diminished. Some queens adapted, others simply disappeared, taking their recipes with them. The last generation of queens, working through the 1930s and early 1940s, knew they were witnessing the end of an era. A few tried teaching their recipes to daughters, but most kept their secrets. Perhaps they knew that without the plaza, without the nightly competition, without the whole theatrical experience, the recipes alone weren't enough. When the health department finally closed them down in 1943, San Antonio lost more than just convenient street food. The city lost a tradition that had turned dinner into drama, competition into community, and working-class women into celebrities. But while the Queen's reign ended, the competitive spirit they fostered was about to spread beyond the plazas. Small Texas towns were beginning to discover that chili could bring communities together, raise money for good causes, and create new kinds of competitions. The Queen's nightly battles for customers were about to evolve into something more organized, more official, but perhaps never quite as magical as those lantern-lit evenings in Military Plaza. You're standing in the fellowship hall of a small Baptist church in Fredericksburg, Texas, sometime in 1935. The Depression has hit everyone hard, and the church needs a new roof before the winter rains come. Someone suggests a chili supper fundraiser, 5 cents a bowl, all you can eat for a quarter. What happens next will accidentally plant the seeds for organized competition. The transformation from simple fundraising meals to competitive events appears to have been gradual, almost accidental. Evidence from church records and local newspapers between the 1920s and 1950s suggests these suppers started simply enough. One cook, usually whoever volunteered, making a large pot to feed the community. But human nature being what it is, competition crept in through the back door. According to scattered historical accounts, the shift began when churches started having multiple cooks contribute pots, partly for variety, partly because no single pot could feed everyone. Mrs. Henderson makes her usual recipe. Mrs. Schmidt adds extra meat to hers. Mrs. Rodriguez brings the one her mother taught her. Nobody's officially competing, but everyone notices whose pot empties first. The mainstream fact is that community fundraising suppers were widespread across Texas during the Depression and post-war years. Documented in hundreds of local newspapers, these events raised money for churches, schools, fire departments, civic improvements. What's less clear, and historians continue to debate, is exactly when and where formal judging first appeared. Here's the peculiar part that shows up in multiple oral histories. Some communities developed elaborate, unofficial scoring systems. The Methodist women in one town allegedly kept a secret tally of whose chili pot emptied first at each supper, tracking results across years in what they called the recipe book, though it was really more of a wins and losses record. I'd love to see that book today. Imagine the drama hidden in those careful notations. The scholarly uncertainty revolves around origins. Some historians point to a 1952 event in Dallas as the first organized cook-off. Others argue that competitive judging existed earlier but went unrecorded. The challenge is that most evidence comes from oral histories collected decades later, memories shaped by time and perhaps improved by nostalgia. As one researcher noted, everyone wants their town to have been first. You watch as these community suppers evolve their own traditions. In some towns, cooks would arrive hours early to claim the best spot in the serving line, knowing that pot position mattered. Corner spots allegedly got more traffic. Tables near the desserts drew hungry children who might convince parents to try just one more bowl. The politics of pot placement became serious business. The economic reality drove innovation in ways the chili queens might have recognized. During the Depression, cooks stretched recipes with beans, rice, pasta, anything filling and cheap. Some historians suggest, though documentation is fragmentary, that this era's forced creativity led to many regional variations we still see today. Necessity didn't just mother invention, it fathered entirely new chili styles. What's documented clearly is the social function these events served. In small Texas towns where entertainment options were limited, chili suppers became social highlights. Courtships began over bowls of red. Business deals were discussed. Political campaigns launched. The chili was almost secondary to the community gathering. Almost, but not quite. By the 1940s, patterns were emerging that would shape future competitions. Some towns started having guest judges, usually the mayor or visiting preacher, supposedly to prevent hurt feelings, though this probably caused more drama than it prevented. One account from 1947 describes a judge who wisely declared a three-way tie, then quickly left town before anyone could object. The quirky detail that multiple sources mention, though none can prove, involves sabotage attempts. Stories circulate about mysterious extra salt appearing in rival pots, peppers vanishing from preparation tables, one possibly apocryphal tale of a cook who brought a padlock from her pot lid. Whether true or exaggerated, these stories suggest competition was getting serious even without official rules. Women dominated these early competitions, if we can call them that. Men might barbecue or handle the grunt work, but chili was largely women's domain. Church cookbooks from the era preserve hundreds of recipes, each credited to Mrs. Somebody, their first names often lost to history. These women were competing for community recognition, social standing, and the considerable power that came with being known for the best chili in town. The regional variations that developed during this period were remarkable. German communities around New Braunfels added sausage. Czech settlements near West incorporated paprika. Mexican-American communities maintained traditional preparations while Anglo cooks experimented wildly. Each town's chili supper reflected its particular cultural mix, creating micro-regional styles that persist today. Based on available evidence, the transition from fundraiser to competition accelerated after World War II. Returning veterans had experienced food from around the world, or at least around the Pacific and Europe. They brought home new ideas, new spices, and perhaps most importantly, experience with organized competitions from military cook-offs. Some historians theorize, though concrete proof is limited, that military veterans drove the formalization of chili competitions. The documentation improved significantly by the late 1940s. Newspapers start mentioning winners of chili suppers, though what constituted winning remained vague. Sometimes it meant selling out first. Sometimes it meant mysterious judges' decisions. Sometimes it just meant whoever shouted loudest that theirs was best. The lack of formal rules created wonderful chaos. You notice how these events maintain the chili queen's tradition of competition through performance, even if unconsciously. Cooks developed signature presentations, special serving bowls, distinctive garnishes. One woman reportedly served her chili with tiny American flags during the war. Another added a dollop of sour cream shaped like a star. The theatrical element never disappeared. It just moved from plazas to church halls. The fascinating aspect that researchers have noted, though interpretations vary, is how these suppers democratized competition. Unlike the chili queens who needed prime plaza locations and regular customers, anyone with a pot and a recipe could enter a church supper. Social class mattered less when everyone was raising money for the same cause, at least in theory. By the early 1950s, some forward-thinking communities started organizing what they called chili championships, though these bore little resemblance to modern cook-offs. Rules were minimal, judging criteria mysterious, and winners were sometimes determined by applause volume, which led to predictable controversies when large families showed up to support their cook. The stage was being set for something bigger. Word spread between towns about successful fundraisers. Recipes traveled with families moving for post-war jobs. The idea that chili could be competitively judged was taking hold. All it needed was someone audacious enough to declare a world championship. Soon, that audacious moment would arrive in the most unlikely place, an abandoned mining town where ghosts outnumbered residents, where two men with egos bigger than Texas would turn chili cooking into a spectacle that would capture national attention. You're bouncing along a dirt road in far west Texas. October 21st, 1967. Heading toward Terlingua, a ghost town that's been mostly dead since the mercury mines closed in the 1940s. The dust cloud behind your car might be the most activity this place has seen in years. Yet somehow, two men with oversized personalities have convinced people to drive hundreds of miles to watch them cook chili here, of all places. The documented facts of that day are deliciously absurd. Wick Fowler, a reporter and self-proclaimed chili expert from Austin, faced off against H. Alan Smith, a humorist from New York who'd had the audacity to write an article claiming that nobody in Texas knew how to make proper chili. The insult could not stand. Honor demanded satisfaction, and somehow that meant a cooking duel in a desert ghost town. The whole event started as a publicity stunt. Tom Tierney, who owned a ranch near Terlingua, and Dallas lawyer David Witz had been looking for ways to promote the remote area. Carroll Shelby, yes, the race car designer, got involved because he owned property there too. They needed something to draw attention, and these two chili antagonists provided the perfect excuse. The fact that this marketing gimmick would spawn a 50-year tradition, well, nobody saw that coming. You watch as maybe 100 people gather in the desert, journalists who'd driven from Dallas and Houston, locals from Alpine and Study Butte, curious tourists who happened to hear about it. Alan Smith arrives wearing a firefighter's helmet and asbestos gloves, claiming Texas chili is so dangerous it requires protective gear. Fowler responds by taste testing his chili with theatrical grimaces, pretending to check for poison. The competition hasn't even started, and already it's more entertainment than cooking. The mainstream historical fact is that this cook-off ended in a draw. The three judges were David Witz, Floyd Schneider of San Antonio, and Hallie Stillwell, a legendary justice of the peace from Alpine. Witz voted for Fowler, Schneider for Smith, and Stillwell in what became the most famous non-decision in chili history, claimed her taste buds had been ruined and couldn't render a verdict. Whether she genuinely couldn't decide or wisely avoided making enemies, we'll never know for certain. Here's where it gets interesting from a historical perspective. This event created not one but two organizations that still exist today. The Chili Appreciation Society International, CASI, formed immediately after to support Fowler's style of traditional Texas chili. No beans, no tomatoes, just meat, peppers, and spices. The International Chili Society, ICS, would form later in California, taking a more inclusive approach to ingredients. The schism that started in Terlingua continues to divide the Chile world. The quirky details from that day are wonderful. Smith reportedly added an entire bottle of Tabasco to his pot, then complained that Texans couldn't handle spicy food when nobody could eat it. Fowler brought his chili in a pot he claimed had been seasoned by 20 years of cooking, which may or may not have been sanitary, but definitely added to the mystique. One spectator brought a mariachi band that nobody had asked for. They played anyway. Honestly, the chaos probably improved the event. Contemporary newspaper accounts describe the scene that was part cooking competition, part frontier theater, part drunken party. The Austin American-Statesman reported that more beer was consumed than chili, which seems entirely plausible given the remote location and festive atmosphere. The handful of remaining Terlingua residents, all 3 or 4 of them, watched bemused as their ghost town briefly came back to life. The scholarly debate around this event centers on its authenticity versus its manufactured nature. Some historians argue it was purely a publicity stunt that accidentally created a tradition. Others contend that it channeled genuine Texas competitive spirit into a formal structure. The evidence suggests both are true. It was absolutely manufactured, and it absolutely captured something real about Texas culture. What made this location particularly inspired, or insane depending on your perspective, was its inaccessibility. Terlingua sits about 80 miles from the nearest town of any size, in the Chihuahuan Desert, where October temperatures can swing from freezing at night to blazing hot at noon. The mercury mining ghosts probably wondered what all these crazy people were doing in their ruins. You notice how both competitors understood instinctively that showmanship mattered as much as flavor. This wasn't just about cooking, it was about performing Texasness for a national audience. Smith played the Eastern interloper perfectly. Fowler embodied the defending Texan champion. They created archetypes that future competitors would follow for decades. The recipes from that day have become legendary, though somewhat disputed. Fowler's 2-alarm chili was published widely and included specific instructions about using lean beef, chili powder, oregano, cumin, cayenne, Tabasco, and hot water. Definitely no beans. Smith's recipe varied depending on who's telling the story, but allegedly included everything Fowler's did plus kidney beans and possibly tomatoes, just to annoy the purists. The immediate aftermath was telling. Both sides claimed victory despite the draw. Smith wrote another article declaring himself the moral winner. Fowler announced there would be a rematch next year. And suddenly, without anyone quite planning it, Terlingua had an annual event. The ghost town that couldn't support a gas station had somehow become the self-proclaimed center of the Chile universe. The competing organizations that emerged created different philosophies that persist today. Casi became the fundamentalist denomination of Chile, defending traditional recipes with religious fervor. Their rules specify no beans, no pasta, no rice, no garnish in the cup, just pure chili. ICS took a Big Tent approach, allowing beans and other ingredients, believing innovation shouldn't be punished. Local newspaper coverage from 1968 shows both groups claimed to host the real championship the following year. And amazingly, both did at the same time in the same ghost town, separated by a few hundred yards and enormous egos. Competitors had to choose sides. Judges were lobbied like politicians. The duel cook-offs continued for years because apparently one chili championship in a ghost town wasn't enough. The cultural impact exceeded anyone's wildest expectations. What started as a joke, a publicity stunt, a manufactured controversy, became a genuine phenomenon. Within 5 years, hundreds of regional cook-offs were using Terlingua-style rules. Thousands of people were traveling to that desert ghost town each November. Carroll Shelby probably sold his land for more than he ever imagined. You can still visit Terlingua today. It's slightly less ghostly now, with maybe 100 full-time residents, art galleries where the Mercury store used to be. But every November, thousands descend for what are still 2 competing championships. Cassie's Original and ICS's International held the same weekend, still refusing to merge, still arguing about beans. The lesson from that first showdown seems to be that Texans will compete over anything, especially if it involves tradition, honor, and the ability to claim yours is the real version. What Fowler and Smith probably didn't realize was that they weren't just cooking chili. They were creating a template for competition that would spread across Texas like wildfire. Soon, very soon, those 2 organizations would start writing rules, creating sanctioned events, establishing hierarchies of local, regional, and state competitions. The anarchic spirit of Terlingua was about to meet the bureaucratic impulse to organize, standardize, and regulate. The Wild West of Chile was about to be tamed, sort of. You're sitting in a hotel conference room in Dallas. 1972, watching grown adults argue passionately about whether garlic powder constitutes a legal spice. Someone just stood up and pounded the table about tomato paste. Another person storms out when beans are even mentioned. This is the 3rd meeting this month of the Chili Appreciation Society International's Rules Committee, and things are getting heated in ways that have nothing to do with peppers. The formation of CASI in 1967 and ICS in 1975 created something chili competitions had never had before: official governing bodies with actual rule books. Like the Chili Queens establishing their plaza territories, these organizations carved out their kingdoms, except now with membership cards, sanctioned events, and more bureaucracy than anyone could have predicted. CASI's approach was fundamentalist from the start. Their rules, documented in newsletters and official publications, specified that competition chili must be made from scratch on site, no marinating meat beforehand, no complete commercial chili powders, definitely no beans or pasta. Contestants would be disqualified for foreign objects in their chili, which included anything beyond meat, spices, and peppers. They weren't just protecting tradition, they were building walls around it. Meanwhile, in California, the International Chili Society was taking a different path. Founded by Carol Hancock and others after a disagreement with Cossey's rigid approach, ICS welcomed innovation. They created categories: traditional red, no beans; chili verde; homestyle, beans allowed; even salsa competitions. Their philosophy seemed to be that good chili is good chili, regardless of orthodoxy. This probably gave Cossey purists nightmares. The mainstream historical fact is that these two organizations created the infrastructure for modern competitive chili cooking. By 1975, Cossey had chartered over 100 PODS local chapters across multiple states. ICS was sanctioning events nationwide. Both organizations established point systems, qualification requirements, and paths to their respective world championships. What had been casual local competitions became a structured sport, complete with rankings and regulations. The scholarly debate during this period focused on authenticity. Food historians argue about whether Cossey's strict rules preserve genuine Texas tradition or create an artificial construct. Some anthropologists suggest, though evidence is interpretive, that the rulebooks actually changed how people cooked chili at home, forcing diversity underground while standardizing competition styles. It's possible that in trying to preserve tradition, they accidentally invented a new one. You watch as the politics of chili become surprisingly complex. Cossey creates referee positions, trained officials who monitor cooking and judging at sanctioned events. They develop elaborate blind judging procedures, numbered cups, score sheets with specific categories. Showmanship is explicitly banned from affecting scores, though everyone knows it still matters. One referee reportedly carried a ruler to measure the distance between cooking stations, ensuring fairness through geometry. Here's the bizarre part that shows up in multiple accounts from the era: the Great Cumin Controversy of 1973. Cossey nearly split over whether cumin was a traditional Texas spice or a foreign intrusion. Letters in the organization's newsletter. The Goat Gap Gazette grew increasingly hostile. Someone suggested settling it with a duel, thankfully using ladles, not pistols. The compromise allowed cumin, but some members never forgave what they saw as capitulation to modernists. Honestly, imagine losing friends over cumin. The ICS developed their own peculiar traditions. Their events included People's Choice Awards alongside official judging, creating two parallel competitions, one for purists, one for populists. They also pioneered the concept of celebrity judges, bringing in actors, athletes, politicians who usually knew nothing about chili but generated publicity. This horrified Cossey members who believed judging required years of chili consumption experience. The economic impact of organization was immediate. Entry fees for sanctioned cook-offs generated revenue. Membership dues funded newsletters and administration. Corporate sponsors started paying attention, seeing organized demographics they could target. By the mid-1970s, Companies like Wick Fowler's Two Alarm Chili and Carol Shelby's Chili Mix were sponsoring events. The hobby was becoming a business. Regional variations in rules created interesting tensions. Cassie's Texas heartland maintained the strictest standards, but pods in other states sometimes bent rules to accommodate local preferences. New Mexico pods faced constant pressure about green chili, which traditional Cassie rules didn't recognize. Oklahoma members kept trying to sneak in beans, claiming they were just being neighborly. Each regional championship became a battleground between local taste and organizational orthodoxy. The documentation from this period reveals fascinating details about judging criteria. Cassie established 5 categories: aroma, red color, consistency, taste, and aftertaste, each scored from 1 to 10. ICS used similar but not identical standards, creating endless debates about which system was superior. Judges underwent training sessions, learning to identify specific flavors, detect prohibited ingredients, and somehow quantify the unquantifiable experience of eating chili. You notice how the rule books grew thicker each year, addressing scenarios nobody had imagined. What if someone's chili pot breaks during cooking? Can you use electricity, or must it be gas or wood? Is MSG considered a spice or a foreign substance? One memorable ruling addressed whether a competitor could pray over their pot. Allowed as long as it didn't disturb other cooks. The personalities driving these organizations were as spicy as their chili. Frank Tolbert, who helped found Cassie, wrote a book called A Bowl of Red that became the fundamentalist Bible. He traveled Texas like a chili evangelist, preaching against beans with religious fervor. Carol Shelby used his racing fame to promote ICS events, bringing a showman's flair that annoyed purists but attracted crowds. These weren't just administrators, they were true believers in their respective causes. Women's participation in the organizational structure remained limited, though they dominated actual cooking competitions. The boards and rules committees were predominantly male, while the championship winners were increasingly female. This disconnect created tension that wouldn't be fully addressed for decades. Some female competitors formed informal networks, sharing techniques and strategies outside official channels, creating a shadow organization within the organization. The international expansion both groups claimed was mostly aspirational. Cassie's International consisted mainly of a few Canadian pods and one mysteriously in Scotland. ICS had better reach through California's cultural connections, but still remained primarily American. Both organizations dreamed of worldwide chili domination, though the world seemed remarkably uninterested in their ambitions. By the late 1970s, the infrastructure was complete, or at least as complete as something this inherently chaotic could be. Hundreds of sanctioned cook-offs followed standardized rules. Thousands of competitors carried membership cards. Points were tallied, championships were earned. The wild frontier days of anything-goes chili competitions had been replaced by something resembling organized sport. The irony wasn't lost on old-timers who remembered when chili was just something you ate, not something you scored on a scale of 1 to 10. Some dropped out, refusing to let rulebooks dictate their recipes. Others adapted, learning to cook one way for competitions, another way for family. The split between competition chili and eating chili was widening. What nobody quite anticipated was how this organization would enable the next phase, the emergence of semi-professional competitors who would treat cook-offs like a touring circuit, developing specialized equipment, secret techniques, and rivalries that transcended any single event. The infrastructure meant to preserve tradition was about to enable its evolution into something entirely unexpected. You're walking through a parking lot in San Marcos, Texas, 1983, and it looks like a traveling circus has set up camp. Recreational vehicles stretch for acres, each one modified with outdoor kitchens, propane arrays, custom awnings declaring team names like Hot Lips Chili and Weapons of Mass Digestion. The air carries 20 different smoke signatures, and somewhere a generator hums to power a refrigeration unit that costs more than most people's cars. The circuit had emerged gradually through the late 1970s, but by the 1980s it was a full-fledged phenomenon. Evidence suggests hundreds of competitors were now traveling between major cook-offs like touring musicians, hitting Olympiad in San Marcos, the Republic of Texas Championship in San Antonio, regional qualifiers in Houston, Dallas, Austin. Some teams competed in 30 or 40 events per year, spending more on entry fees and gas than they'd ever win in prize money. These weren't casual weekend hobbyists anymore. You're watching people who've invested thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, in equipment and recipes. Custom-built cooking rigs with multiple burners, temperature-controlled environments, specialized stirring mechanisms that maintained consistent motion. One competitor reportedly spent $3,000 on a single pot, claiming its copper content created superior heat distribution. Whether that's true or just expensive self-delusion, well, the judges never knew what pot the chili came from anyway. The mainstream fact is that major cook-offs in the 1980s grew from hundreds to thousands of competitors. The Olympiad went from 300 entries in 1975 to over 1,000 by 1985. Prize money increased accordingly, though rarely enough to cover expenses. Corporate sponsorships expanded beyond chili-related companies. Beer brands, automotive products, even insurance companies started backing teams. The amateur charm was evolving into something more professional, or at least more expensive. The secret recipe culture intensified to almost paranoid levels. Competitors developed elaborate security measures, cooking screens to block prying eyes, decoy spice containers filled with meaningless powders. Some traveled with locked briefcases containing pre-measured spice packets labeled only with codes. One story, possibly exaggerated but widely believed, describes a cook who hired a food chemist to reverse engineer a rival's winning recipe. The chemist allegedly identified 17 distinct spices, though whether this intelligence was worth the cost remains debatable. Here's the quirky development that multiple sources confirm: the emergence of chili groupies. People who followed successful teams from event to event, not competing but just watching, sampling, socializing. These followers developed their own hierarchies, insider knowledge about who was having a good season, whose recipe had changed, which judges preferred what style. They created an entire social ecosystem around competitive chili that had nothing to do with actually cooking. The scholarly perspective on this period varies widely. Some sociologists see it as a natural evolution of American competitive culture, transforming folk tradition into commercialized sport. Others argue it represents authentic community building, creating chosen families united by shared passion rather than blood or geography. The evidence supports both interpretations, depending on which competitor you asked and how their last cook-off went. You notice the specialized language developing. First walk meant the initial judging round. Turn-in time was sacred. Miss it by 30 seconds and you're disqualified. Gray chili was the ultimate insult, suggesting your spices were dead. Teams developed hand signals for communicating across crowded cook-off grounds, pointing systems for identifying judges who needed to be avoided or courted. The culture was becoming increasingly insular, mysterious to outsiders. The economic ecosystem was fascinating. Beyond entry fees and equipment, competitors spent money on matching team uniforms, custom banners, promotional items to hand out. Some teams had business cards. Others created cookbook compilations of non-competition recipes, since nobody would ever reveal their real secrets. A cottage industry emerged selling everything from specialized chili pots to good luck charms guaranteed to improve your scores. I particularly love the entrepreneur who sold Judge Repellent, which was just empty spray bottles, but people bought them anyway. Women began dominating the winner's circles even as men dominated the organizational structures. By 1985, female competitors had won the majority of major championships, though they remained underrepresented in judging panels and organization leadership. This created interesting dynamics. Some female champions formed informal mentorship networks, teaching younger women not just recipes, but strategy, psychology, the subtle art of competitive presence. The traveling nature of the circuit created its own subculture. RV parks near major cook-offs became temporary communities, competitors who saw each other more than their own neighbors. Romances bloomed over prep tables. Marriages happened between competing teams. Divorces too when recipe secrets were betrayed. One documented case involved a couple who competed separately after divorce, using variations of their formerly shared recipe, each claiming the other had stolen it. Regional styles became more pronounced as competitors specialized. Texas traditional remained the baseline, but California style emerged with more vegetables. New Mexico style featured grain chiles. Midwest competitions started allowing Cincinnati style with cinnamon and chocolate. Each region's circuit developed its own celebrities, champions who rarely competed outside their territory but reigned supreme within it. The technology arms race was remarkable. Simple Coleman stoves gave way to professional-grade equipment. Temperature probes, digital timers, specialized stirring tools designed to prevent bottom scorching. One team arrived with a computer program that calculated spice ratios based on weather conditions, humidity, altitude, and barometric pressure. Whether this was genius or madness, their consistent top 10 finishes suggested something was working. You watch as psychological warfare becomes part of the game. Teams positioned upwind would cook bacon or barbecue during turn-in time, trying to influence judges' palates. Others played loud music to disrupt competitors' concentration. Some spread disinformation about ingredients, claiming to use exotic peppers from Tibet when they really used grocery store powder. The gamesmanship was becoming as elaborate as the cooking. The health consciousness of the broader 1980s culture created interesting tensions. Competitors who spent weekends cooking meat-heavy chilies started developing vegetarian versions for home, though these could never be competition legal. Some judges went on cleansing diets between events, claiming it helped them taste more accurately. The contradiction of health-conscious people dedicating themselves to competitive chili consumption was lost on nobody, but ignored by everybody. Travel logistics became a science. Teams mapped circuits to minimize driving, coordinated schedules months in advance. Some formed caravans for safety and companionship on long hauls. The most dedicated competitors quit jobs or arranged seasonal employment, living on the circuit from spring through fall, then hibernating to perfect recipes for next season. What emerged wasn't just competition, but a complete lifestyle. People introduced themselves by their chili achievements. Hi, I'm Bob, 3-time regional champion. Social status within the community depended on your cook-off credentials more than your day job. A successful banker who couldn't crack the top 10 was nobody. A plumber who'd won state was royalty. The irony was that many competitors admitted they didn't even particularly like chili anymore. After tasting hundreds of samples every weekend, chili became work rather than pleasure. They ate sandwiches between events, saved their palates for competition. Some developed such refined taste they could identify individual spices in a complex blend. Others lost all ability to enjoy simple food. Their pursuit of the perfect bowl had changed their relationship with eating itself. By decade's end, the circuit had become self-sustaining, generating its own economy, culture, even mythology. Stories of legendary cook-offs were passed down like oral traditions. The time someone's chili exploded, the judge who fell asleep mid-tasting, the competitor who won using a recipe he'd allegedly bought from a retiring champion. True or not, these stories bound the community together. But tension was building between traditionalists and showmen, between those who thought competition should be purely about the chili and those who understood that entertainment drew crowds and crowds drew sponsors, and sponsors enabled bigger events. The conflict would soon erupt in ways that threatened to split the community permanently. You're standing at the edge of a crowd in Temple, Texas. 1994, watching a man dump an entire can of ranch-style beans into his competition chili. The collective gasp from Cossie purists could probably be heard in Dallas. Someone shouts, "Disqualified," before judges even taste it. Another voice yells back, "It's the People's Choice category, you fascist." And suddenly what started as a cook-off is threatening to become a food fight. The beans debate had simmered since chili competitions began, but the 1990s saw it reach genuinely absurd levels of passion. Evidence from cook-off programs and newsletters shows that by mid-decade, many events were creating separate categories just to prevent violence. Traditional, no beans. Homestyle, beans allowed. Open, anything goes. Some competitions went further, creating bean-only categories, which traditionalists considered not just heresy, but performance art mocking everything they held sacred. The documented incidents from this era read like comedy sketches, but people took them deadly seriously. At one regional qualifier, a competitor was allegedly caught dropping a single pinto bean into rivals' pots, trying to get them disqualified. The accusation led to demands for pot monitoring, security cameras, chain of custody protocols for chili samples. Whether the bean dropper existed or was paranoid fantasy, the response was real. Some cook-offs hired actual security guards to watch the cooking area. You watch as philosophical arguments about authenticity reach academic levels of complexity. Position papers were written. Historical precedents cited. One competitor published a 30-page manifesto about why beans represented the democratization of chili, making it accessible to Depression-era families who couldn't afford pure meat. Another responded with their own treatise about maintaining cultural purity. The fact that grown adults were writing scholarly papers about legumes in chili, well, that tells you everything about how seriously people took this. The mainstream historical fact is that ingredient controversies extended far beyond beans. Tomatoes remained contested. Pasta was considered abomination by purists, but beloved in Cincinnati. Vegetables beyond onions and peppers sparked fierce debate. By 1995, ICS had 6 distinct categories while Cossie maintained its single traditional standard, creating 2 parallel universes of chili competition that rarely intersected peacefully. Here's the bizarre development that food historians still puzzle over: the Great Hominy Incident of 1996. Someone entered a championship with chili containing hominy, which is technically corn, not beans. The rulebook hadn't anticipated this. Judges spent 3 hours debating whether hominy was a grain, a vegetable, or something else entirely. The competitor waited patiently while officials called experts, consulted dictionaries, even phoned a botanist. The final ruling, hominy was declared bean-adjacent and prohibited, sparked a breakaway movement for inclusive chili competitions. I mean, Imagine your legacy being the person who broke competitive chili over corn. The scholarly perspective reveals deeper cultural tensions. Anthropologists studying the period note that bean debates often mapped onto other social divisions: urban versus rural, progressive versus traditional, native Texan versus transplant. The beans weren't really about beans. They were about identity, belonging, and who got to define authentic Texas culture. Some researchers argue the conflicts reflected broader 1990s culture wars playing out in miniature around cooking pots. Regional variations became battle lines. New Mexico's green chili advocates pushed for recognition, arguing their tradition predated Texas red by centuries. Ohio defenders of Cincinnati chili, with its cinnamon and served over spaghetti, faced constant ridicule but remained defiant. California competitions embraced fusion approaches, adding Asian spices, tropical fruits, ingredients that made Texas traditionalists physically recoil. Each region's defenders cited historical precedent, cultural heritage, usually while ignoring contradicting evidence. You notice the language becoming increasingly militant. Bean lovers was spoken like a slur. Purists became synonymous with inflexible zealots. Online forums, still primitive in the mid-90s, hosted flame wars that made political debates look civil. One archived CompuServe thread about tomato paste runs 847 messages deep, deteriorating from recipe discussion to personal attacks to what appears to be challenges to physical combat. The internet was young, but chili warriors adapted quickly to digital battlegrounds. The economic impact was significant. Competitions splitting into multiple categories meant more entry fees, more judges needed, longer events. Some organizers loved the expansion. More participants meant more revenue. Others worried about diluting the brand, making chili competitions too complicated for casual spectators to understand. Several major cook-offs collapsed trying to accommodate everyone, learning that sometimes attempting peace creates more conflict than choosing sides. Women competitors often found themselves caught in the middle. Many had learned recipes from grandmothers who absolutely used beans, making them choose between family tradition and competition rules. Some competed in multiple categories: cooking traditional for Kasi events, homestyle for ICS, secretly preferring neither but adapting to survive. The practical flexibility many women showed contrasted sharply with the ideological rigidity of male-dominated organizing committees. Corporate sponsors struggled with the controversies. Bush's Baked Beans wanted to sponsor events, but faced boycotts from purist competitions. Spice companies had to carefully market products to avoid alienating either camp. One company created 2 different chili seasoning packets: traditional Texas and family style, identical except one included dried beans. Marketing to a divided community required delicate navigation. The judging controversies were particularly contentious. Should judges taste categories they personally opposed? Could someone who believed beans were heretical fairly evaluate homestyle chili? Some competitions required judges to sign neutrality pledges, promising to evaluate based on criteria, not personal preference. Others assembled separate judging panels for each category, creating hierarchies of judges with their own politics and rivalries. You watch as competitors develop strategies for navigating the divided landscape. Some maintained multiple identities, competing under pseudonyms in different categories. Others became specialists, dominating one style while publicly denouncing others they secretly enjoyed. The compartmentalization required to succeed in 1990s chili competition resembled Cold War spy craft more than cooking. Academic interest peaked during this period. Folklorists documented recipe variations. Sociologists studied group dynamics. Food historians traced ingredient origins. The University of Texas held a symposium on chili and cultural identity, which reportedly devolved into shouting matches during the panel on beans. The scholarly attention legitimized the debates while also highlighting their absurdity. International perspectives provided unwelcome clarity. Mexican food writers pointed out that American chili debates ignored the dish's actual origins. British observers found the passion incomprehensible, considering their own casual relationship with traditional foods. Japanese competitive eaters expressed confusion about why ingredients mattered more than consumption speed. The outside world's bemusement only strengthened internal resolve on all sides. Media coverage alternated between mockery and fascination. Newspapers ran humorous columns about the bean wars. Television segments featured competing cooks defending their positions with evangelical fervor. One documentary filmmaker spent 2 years following both camps, eventually abandoning the project after receiving death threats for appearing to favor one side. The coverage amplified conflicts while attracting new competitors drawn to the drama. By decade's end, exhaustion was setting in. The energy required to maintain such passionate division was wearing people down. Some competitions quietly stopped enforcing strict categories. Others maintained rules but stopped policing them aggressively. A few brave souls suggested that maybe, possibly, different styles could coexist. These peacemakers were usually ignored, but seeds of tent were being planted. The irony was that blind taste tests consistently showed judges couldn't reliably identify whether chili contained beans or not once it was properly cooked and seasoned. Several scientific studies, conducted with surprising rigor, demonstrated that ideology mattered more than ingredients in evaluation. People tasted what they expected to taste. Their palates were political, their tongues tribal. The new millennium was approaching, and with it would come changes that made ingredient debates seem quaint. Corporate mega sponsorships were coming. Television coverage was expanding. Social media would soon transform how competitions operated. The bean battles would continue, but they'd soon be overshadowed by bigger questions about what competitive chili was becoming. You're watching a man in a sequin cape stir a pot with a 4-foot bedazzled spoon. 2005, Galveston, Texas. His assistant shoots flames from a mini flamethrower every time he adds spices. A sound system plays Ring of Fire on repeat. The actual chili might be terrible. Nobody will remember, but hundreds of spectators are filming with digital cameras, and that's what matters now. The transformation of cook-offs into entertainment spectacles had been building gradually, but the 2000s saw it explode into something P.T. Barnum would have recognized. Evidence from event photography and early YouTube videos shows competitors arriving in custom-painted buses, setting up elaborate themed camps. Apocalypse Chow with Mad Max decorations. Chili Matrix with participants dressed as Neo stirring in slow motion. The cooking was becoming almost secondary to the show. Major competitions started adding showmanship as an official category, with its own trophies and prize money. The criteria were wonderfully vague: stage presence, crowd engagement, creative interpretation of theme. Basically, whoever got the most applause without actually injuring anyone. Some traditionalists were appalled, watching their serious culinary competition devolve into what they called dinner theater for drunks. But crowds loved it, and crowds brought sponsors, and sponsors brought money. You notice how the performances evolved from simple costumes to elaborate productions. Teams hired choreographers. Some brought professional sound equipment. One group reportedly spent $10,000 on a 30-minute show involving trained dogs, smoke machines, and a gospel choir singing about beans. The dogs' role remains unclear, but they wore matching bandanas and the crowd went wild. That's really all that mattered. The mainstream fact is that attendance at major cook-offs increased dramatically when entertainment became central. The Houston Pod's Chili Cook-Off went from 5,000 attendees in 2000 to over 30,000 by 2008. Entry fees for competitors remained stable, but general admission tickets became significant revenue. Events transformed from participant-focused competitions to spectator entertainment, fundamentally changing the economics. Here's where it gets genuinely weird: the emergence of professional showmanship consultants. People who didn't cook but specialized in designing theatrical presentations for competitive teams. They'd create scripts, design costumes, choreograph routines. One consultant, known as Dr. Dazzle, claimed to have helped 12 teams win showmanship awards. His secret supposedly involved psychological profiles of typical judges. Though this sounds like expensive nonsense, teams kept hiring him. The scholarly perspective on this shift varies significantly. Performance studies academics see it as natural evolution of American competitive culture, always pushing toward bigger, louder, more spectacular. Food historians worry about authenticity being lost in theatrical fog, literally in some cases. Cultural critics argue the showmanship actually returns chili competitions to their roots, remembering the chili queens were performers as much as cooks. The debate continues in academic journals nobody reads. Regional differences in showmanship acceptance were stark. Texas competitions generally segregated entertainment from serious cooking. California events integrated them completely. Midwest cook-offs found middle ground, encouraging costumes but not full productions. One Mississippi event tried requiring showmanship from all competitors. It lasted 1 year after several older participants threatened legal action over age discrimination. You watch as technology changes the game entirely. Digital cameras meant every moment could be captured. Early social media platforms let teams build followings between events. MySpace pages dedicated to chili teams seem quaint now, but they were revolutionary then. Some competitors gained more fame for their shows than their chili, becoming minor celebrities in the circuit, signing autographs, selling merchandise, never winning actual cooking competitions. The corporate response was swift and calculated. Beer companies loved the party atmosphere showmanship created. Energy drink brands sponsored the wildest teams. One insurance company backed a team whose entire show involved demonstrating kitchen safety, which was boring but oddly hypnotic. The marriage between corporate marketing and competitive spectacle was consummated, for better or worse. Women competitors had complex relationships with showmanship requirements. Some embraced it as leveling the playing field, allowing personality and creativity to matter alongside cooking skill. Others saw it as trivializing their culinary expertise, forcing them to be entertainers when they wanted to be chefs. The compromises many made, cooking seriously while performing reluctantly, created a new competitive dynamic. Here's a detail that captures the era perfectly: the rise of method cooking. Competitors who stayed in character throughout the entire event. The team dressed as pirates who spoke only in sailor argot for 8 hours. The group portrayed Depression-era hobos who cooked from tin cans over trash can fires. One legendary performer claimed to be channeling the spirit of a dead chuck wagon cook, maintaining the persona so completely that some spectators thought he needed psychiatric help. He won showmanship 3 years running. The judging complications were immense. How do you fairly evaluate someone's theatrical performance while maintaining blind chili judging? Separate panels were required. Different timing systems developed. Some events had showmanship performances before cooking began. Others integrated them throughout the day. The logistics became so complex that event coordinators needed production managers, turning local cook-offs into miniature festivals. You notice the generation gap widening. Younger competitors embrace spectacle naturally, having grown up with reality TV and social media. Older participants either adapted or retreated to traditional-only events. Some formed heritage competitions explicitly banning showmanship, creating safe spaces for serious cooking. The circuit was dividing into entertainment and culinary tracks, rarely intersecting peacefully. The safety issues were real if occasionally hilarious. Fire marshals started attending events after several flame-based performances went wrong. Insurance requirements increased. One team's cannon prop accidentally launched hot chili into the crowd, leading to strict projectile policies. Another group's smoke machine triggered evacuation procedures, ending the competition early. The line between entertainment and hazard was constantly negotiated. media coverage exploded. Food Network sent crews to major events. Local news loved the visual content. One team deliberately created controversies to attract cameras, claiming their chili contained exotic meats, starting fake feuds with rivals, proving that any publicity was good publicity.
Their chili was mediocre, but their brand recognition was exceptional. The psychological impact on serious competitors was significant. Many reported feeling forced to choose between integrity and relevance. Some developed split personalities, clowning for crowds while secretly resenting it. Others discovered hidden theatrical talents, finding joy in performance they'd never expected. The identity crisis of competitive chili was playing out in individual psyches. International observers were completely baffled. A Japanese television crew filming American food culture spent 3 days at a cook-off, later reporting they couldn't understand why cooking required costumes. European food critics wrote scathing articles about American inability to take cuisine seriously. Mexican chefs just shook their heads, wondering what had happened to their simple dish. The money was undeniable, though. Sponsorship deals for entertaining teams exceeded prize money by factors of 10. Some teams made livings entirely from appearance fees, never actually winning competitions. The ecosystem had shifted from rewarding the best chili to rewarding the best show. Traditional competitors watched their pure cooking skills become economically worthless. By 2008's end, the transformation was complete. Major cook-offs were primarily entertainment events that happened to involve cooking. Smaller traditional competitions persisted but attracted shrinking audiences. The question wasn't whether showmanship belonged in chili competitions, but whether chili belonged in showmanship competitions. Something else was stirring, though. Technology was about to change everything again. Smartphones were arriving. Social media was evolving. Soon every competitor would be a content creator. Every pot of chili a potential viral moment. The stage was set for digital revolution. You're scrolling through your phone at a cook-off in Austin. 2013, watching a competitor live stream their cooking process while simultaneously responding to Twitter comments. Their assistant holds 3 phones, one for Instagram stories, one for Facebook Live, one monitoring their hashtag #ChiliLegend2013. The actual cooking seems almost incidental to the content creation, and when their pot suddenly goes viral because a bird lands in it, they gain 10,000 followers but get disqualified. They don't seem to mind. The digital transformation of chili cook-offs happened faster than anyone anticipated. Smartphones arrived in everyone's pockets by 2010, and suddenly every competitor was a potential media company. Evidence from social media archives shows the explosion was immediate. Cook-off hashtags went from non-existent in 2009 to trending topics by 2011. Facebook pages for chili teams accumulated more fans than some restaurants. Instagram turned every bowl into a photo shoot opportunity. The early adopters gained massive advantages. Teams that understood social media could build followings that influenced judging, even in supposedly blind competitions. When thousands of people online knew Big Red's revenge was in cup number 12, well, judges are human. The ability to create buzz became as valuable as the ability to balance spices. Some competitions tried banning phones from judging areas, but enforcement proved impossible. You watch as viral moments reshape the entire competitive landscape. A video of someone dropping their entire pot, crying, then laughing while eating chili off the ground gets 15 million views. They lose the competition but gain sponsorship deals worth more than any prize. Another team's synchronized stirring dance, filmed by a spectator, launches them onto morning talk shows. The randomness of virality means anyone could become famous or infamous at
at any moment. The mainstream fact is that social media metrics became part of many competitions' official scoring by 2015. People's Choice Awards determined by online voting were common. Some events partnered with platforms for exclusive streaming rights. The International Chili Society reported that events with strong social media presence saw attendance increases of 40 to 60% between 2010 and 2015. Digital engagement was driving real-world participation. Here's the peculiar development that nobody saw coming: the rise of chili influencers who didn't actually compete. They attended events as media personalities, sampling, reviewing, creating content about other people's cooking. Some accumulated hundreds of thousands of followers just by being attractive while eating chili. One influencer, known as Chili Queen Bee, reportedly charged $5,000 for a single Instagram post from an event. She couldn't cook chili, admitted this freely, but her endorsement could make a team famous. The power dynamics were completely inverted. The scholarly analysis of this period focuses on democratization versus commodification. Some researchers argue social media made competitions more accessible, allowing unknown cooks to build audiences without winning titles. Others contend it transformed authentic cultural practice into performative capitalism, where metrics mattered more than merit. Based on available evidence, both perspectives seem valid, depending on whether you won or lost the algorithm lottery. Regional differences in digital adoption were striking. California competitions embraced every platform immediately. Texas events remained skeptical but gradually adapted. Midwest cook-offs found themselves caught between traditions and trends. One Louisiana event tried to ban all recording devices, lasted 1 year before recognizing they'd become irrelevant. The digital divide wasn't geographic, it was generational and philosophical. You notice how algorithms started shaping cooking decisions. Teams discovered certain colors photographed better. Red chilies with bright green garnishes got more likes than brown traditional presentations. Smoke effects looked dramatic on video. Steam created mystique in photos. Some competitors admitted choosing ingredients based on visual appeal rather than flavor, cooking for cameras instead of judges. The medium was literally changing the message and the meal. The fraud and controversy opportunities were endless. Teams bought followers to appear more popular, created fake accounts to vote in online competitions. One scandal involved a competitor who photoshopped their chili onto celebrity plates, claiming endorsements that never happened. Another team got caught using stock photos of professional food photography, passing it off as their own cooking. The authenticity crisis that plagued all social media hit chili competitions particularly hard. Women competitors often dominated social media metrics while still facing traditional competition challenges. Female-led teams accumulated followers faster, generated more engagement, created more shareable content. Yet they remained underrepresented in competition leadership and traditional judging victories. The disconnect between online success and institutional recognition highlighted persistent structural inequalities. Corporate sponsors completely reorganized their strategies. Instead of backing winning teams, they sought viral moments. Engagement rates mattered more than trophy counts. One spice company signed exclusive deals with teams that had never won anything but consistently generated content. Beer brands created hashtag challenges at events, offering prizes for most creative posts rather than best chili. The entire economic model was restructuring around attention rather than achievement. Here's a detail that captures the absurdity perfectly: the emergence of chili coach services. People who specialized in optimizing social media presence for competitive teams. They develop content calendars, design Instagram-worthy booth decorations, script TikTok videos, coach competitors on camera presence. One team hired a full social media manager who traveled with them to events, posting real-time updates while they cooked. The manager made more money than any team member won in prizes. The technological arms race accelerated beyond phones. Drones appeared over cook-offs, filming aerial footage. GoPros were mounted on stirring spoons, providing chili's eye view content. One team live-streamed their entire cooking process in 360-degree video. Viewers could virtually stand next to the pot. The boundary between physical and digital presence was dissolving. Some people attended cook-offs entirely through screens, feeling more connected than actual attendees. You watch as controversies explode across platforms in real time. A judge's offhand comment about someone's chili becomes a Twitter war within hours. Cultural appropriation debates rage when non-Hispanic teams use Spanish names. Recipe stealing accusations spread faster than any investigation can follow. The court of public opinion renders verdicts before any official ruling. Reputations built over decades are destroyed in minutes. The mental health impact was significant but rarely discussed. Competitors reported anxiety about online perception exceeding competition stress. Some quit after brutal social media criticism. Others became addicted to metrics, checking likes obsessively, measuring self-worth and engagement rates. The fun of friendly competition was being replaced by the pressure of public performance. Several prominent teams took digital detoxes, competing without posting, usually lasting one event before economic reality forced them back online. International reach exploded beyond anything previous generations imagined. A small cook-off in rural Texas could attract viewers from Japan, Germany, Brazil. Comments in dozens of languages appeared under chili photos. Some teams gained international sponsorships without ever leaving their state. The local had become global, but somehow also less communal. People watched through screens instead of attending, commented instead of conversing. Traditional media struggled to remain relevant. Newspapers covered events, but their stories appeared days after social media had moved on. Television segments felt dated compared to real-time streaming. Food Network tried creating chili competition reality shows, but they couldn't capture the authentic chaos of actual events. The democratization of media meant anyone could be a broadcaster, but it also meant nobody was truly authoritative. The generational divide became a chasm. Older competitors who'd spent decades perfecting recipes watched teenagers with mediocre chili become famous through clever TikToks. Some embraced collaboration, learning from younger competitors about digital strategies while teaching traditional techniques. Others retreated entirely, forming analog-only competitions that felt increasingly like historical reenactments. By decade's end, the transformation was absolute. Every major cook-off had official hashtags, streaming partnerships, social media walls displaying real-time posts. Competitors spent as much time on content creation as cooking. Some events were designed primarily for social media, with cooking almost incidental. The question wasn't whether to engage digitally, but how to maintain any authentic connection to traditional competition. Yet something interesting was emerging from the chaos. New hybrid forms that honored tradition while embracing innovation. Young competitors learning historical techniques to create authentic content. Old-timers discovering that social media could preserve and spread traditional knowledge. The digital revolution that threatened to destroy chili culture might accidentally be preserving it, just in forms nobody expected. You're standing in the middle of Terlingua again, November 2024, but it's almost unrecognizable from that dusty gathering in 1967. Food trucks line the desert roads. Corporate tents stretch toward the horizon. A professional stage hosts cooking demonstrations live-streamed globally. The ghost town that once held 100 souls now temporarily swells to over 10,000, all here for what's still somehow called the original championship, though Wick Fowler wouldn't recognize much beyond the desert heat. Today's chili cook-off landscape represents something nobody could have predicted when those first cowboys argued over campfire stews. The numbers tell part of the story. Major events like Houston's rodeo cook-off draw over 250,000 attendees annually. The combined economic impact of Texas chili competitions exceeds $50 million per year according to tourism boards, though some economists suggest this might be conservative. Collectively, these events raise millions for charities, from local fire departments to national cancer research. The humble bowl of red has become an economic engine. The infrastructure supporting modern competitions would astound those early organizers. Professional sanctioning bodies maintain databases of thousands of certified judges. Electronic scoring systems tabulate results in real time. Food safety certifications are mandatory. Insurance policies cover everything from allergic reactions to weather cancellations. Some events employ more security staff than the Chili Queen's entire plaza operation. What began as informal gathering has evolved into precisely orchestrated productions. You watch as 3 distinct generations of competitors work side by side. Elderly champions who remember when Cossie first formed, middle-aged circuit veterans who witnessed the showmanship revolution, young digital natives who've never known competition without hashtags. They eye each other with mixtures of respect, suspicion, and bewilderment. Yet they're all here, stirring pots, chasing the same indefinable glory that comes from someone declaring your chili the best. The mainstream fact that defines today's competitions is their incredible diversity. Within a single event, you'll find traditional Kasi rules in one area, ICS categories in another, vegan chili competitions that would horrify purists, children's divisions teaching the next generation, celebrity cook-offs for charity, corporate team building exercises. Each sub-competition maintains its own culture, rules, and passionate defenders. The Big Tent got bigger than anyone imagined possible. Here's what captures the modern absurdity perfectly. At major events, you can now buy artisanal chili-flavored ice cream, chili beer, chili vodka, chili cotton candy, even chili-scented candles. The merchandising would make Disney jealous. One vendor sells competition-grade spices for $50 an ounce, claiming they're blessed by champion cooks. Whether that's true or marketing genius, people buy them. The commercialization is complete, yet somehow the core competition remains oddly pure, just people trying to cook the best pot. The scholarly perspective on current cook-offs reveals fascinating contradictions. Anthropologists note that despite commercialization, these events still function as community rituals, creating temporary societies with their own hierarchies, customs, and shared meanings. Food historians document how competition styles have actually preserved traditional recipes that might otherwise have vanished. Sociologists study how chili cook-offs provide identity and belonging in an increasingly disconnected world. The academic consensus, if such exists, suggests these competitions matter precisely because they shouldn't. Regional variations have crystallized into distinct schools. Texas maintains its fundamentalist core while accommodating innovation at the margins. New Mexico's green chili competitions run parallel but separate, never quite integrating. California's fusion approach horrifies and fascinates in equal measure. The Midwest has developed its own traditions that both honor and ignore Southern origins. Each region's competitions reflect local culture while claiming universal authenticity. You notice how technology and tradition have reached an uneasy tent. Competitors use sous vide equipment to pre-cook meat while maintaining cast iron pots for final preparation. Digital thermometers ensure perfect temperature while recipes remain handwritten on index cards. Social media promotes events that celebrate pre-internet traditions. The contradictions no longer need resolving. They've become part of the charm. The environmental consciousness of younger competitors is reshaping practices. Biodegradable serving cups replace styrofoam. Solar panels power cooking stations. Locally sourced ingredients are marketed as premium, though transportation to remote cook-offs probably negates any carbon savings. Some events have gone entirely plant-based, creating violent reactions from traditionalists, but attracting new audiences. The future of chili might not include meat, a thought that would cause early competitors to revolution. Women now dominate championship circles while finally gaining representation in organizational leadership. Female presidents lead both major sanctioning bodies. Women judges outnumber men at many events. Yet the historical erasure of early female contributors remains largely unaddressed. The chili queens are commemorated with statues, but their recipes are lost. Modern female champions carry this complex legacy, honoring foremothers whose names were never recorded. The international expansion that seemed impossible has somehow occurred. Japan hosts annual chili cook-offs with surprisingly traditional rules. Germany has developed its own circuit complete with beer garden settings. Australia combines chili competitions with barbecue events in ways that offend purists from both traditions. The American export has been adopted, and transformed in ways that would mystify Texan originalists. Corporate involvement has reached levels that transform events into marketing platforms. Energy drink companies sponsor breakfast chili competitions. Cryptocurrency firms create NFTs of winning recipes. Dating apps host singles cook-offs. The commercialization seems absolute until you watch an 80-year-old woman carefully measuring spices from a recipe her grandmother taught her, ignoring everything except the pot in front of her. The corporate and authentic exist simultaneously, neither canceling the other. You watch as competitions adapt to contemporary concerns. Allergen-free categories accommodate dietary restrictions. Sustainable sourcing wins special recognition. Mental health support stations help competitors manage stress. COVID-19 transformed judging procedures, creating protocols that somehow persist. Modern cook-offs must balance tradition with accessibility, nostalgia with innovation, local charm with global reach. The economic ecosystem now includes professional competition teams sponsored like race cars, covered in logos, traveling in wrapped vehicles, earning appearance fees that exceed prize money. Yet alongside them compete teachers, plumbers, accountants who save all year for entry fees. The professionalization hasn't eliminated amateurs, it's created parallel universes that occasionally intersect. Celebrity involvement has evolved from novelty to normal. Food Network stars judge major championships. Musicians perform at evening concerts. Politicians campaign at cook-offs, knowing these events draw diverse crowds. One former president serves as honorary judge annually, though insiders know the real decisions are made by certified judges. Celebrity adds sizzle, but competence still counts. The preservation efforts are particularly interesting. Universities archive winning recipes, though many remain secret. Oral history projects capture stories from aging champions. Documentary filmmakers chronicle disappearing traditions while accidentally creating new ones. The urgency to preserve suggests awareness that something essential might be lost in translation to future generations. Digital innovation continues reshaping competition. Virtual reality experiences let people attend remotely. Artificial intelligence analyzes recipes for optimal spice combinations. Blockchain technology supposedly ensures recipe authenticity, though nobody quite understands how. The technological integration seems simultaneously essential and ridiculous, perfectly capturing modern chili competition paradoxes. You realize standing here in Terlingua, watching thousands gather in the desert for something as simple as judging whose chili tastes best, that the whole endeavor represents something fundamentally human. The need to compete, to gather, to argue about authenticity, to create traditions, then immediately debate them. The competitors spending thousands to win hundreds, the judges tasting until their palates fail, the spectators who don't even like chili but come anyway. They're all participating in something that matters precisely because it doesn't have to. The legend of Texas chili cook-offs isn't really about the chili. It never was. It's about creating community through competition, preserving culture through change, finding meaning in absurdity. The cowboys arguing around chuck wagons, the chili queens competing for customers, the modern competitors with their smartphones and secret recipes, they're all part of the same story. A story about humans doing what humans do, taking something simple and making it impossibly complex, then gathering together to celebrate the beautiful mess they've created. As the sun sets over another championship, casting long shadows across the desert, you can see the threads connecting past and present. The smoke rising from hundreds of cooking fires, the laughter echoing across the gathered crowd, the serious faces of judges contemplating flavors, the disappointing moment when someone realizes they've forgot the salt, the triumphant celebration of another champion crowned. It's all part of the legend now. A legend that keeps growing with each pot stirred, each recipe guarded, each competition that probably shouldn't matter, but somehow absolutely does. And here we are at the end of our journey through smoke and spice, through arguments about beans, through ghost towns and plaza lights. The story isn't really finished. It's still being written every weekend by people who care too much about something that shouldn't matter, but does. Your eyelids are getting heavier now, aren't they? The weight of all those stories. Let your shoulders drop. Let tension melt away, like cheese in a pot, though don't tell the purists. Think about those cowboys around their campfires, exhausted from riding, arguing sleepily about dinner. Voices getting softer as fires die down. Stars growing brighter above Texas plains. You can hear wood crackling, smell the smoke mixing with cool air. Your breathing's getting slower, deeper, matching wooden spoons stirring. Round and round, steady, patient, no rush. Each breath longer, more relaxed, settling you deeper. Picture the chili queens packing up tables, lanterns going dark one by one, the plaza growing quiet. Tomorrow there's another chance, always another chance. Your mind's drifting now, floating between stories. Terlinguist dust, San Antonio's lights. Let it drift. No need to hold thoughts. They can simmer together, becoming something warm. Feel your body sinking deeper into rest. Feet completely still, legs soft, hands peaceful, shoulders released. The competitions continue tomorrow, but right now, nothing matters except rest. The desert's silent now, empty except for wind through abandoned booths, ghost town sleeping, old miners watching. They know it's all just stories, best appreciated with closed eyes. Your thoughts are fuzzy around the edges like morning mist. That's fine. Let them blur. No need for focus anymore tonight. Just float, suspended between waking and sleeping. Listen, hear that. It's nothing, beautifully nothing. No recipes to guard, no beans to debate. Just quiet, just your breathing, getting slower and slower, still slower. Maybe you'll dream of stirring perfect chili over perfect fires. Or maybe quiet dreams, peaceful things. It doesn't matter. Nothing needs to matter. Sink deeper now, past thoughts, past worries, past everything except this moment. Legends keep tomorrow. Right now, only peace, only quiet, only gentle sleep approaching. As you drift, maybe taste something edge of dreams, something warm like home or nothing. Doesn't matter. Only rest matters. Only peace. Only letting go. Sleep's coming or already here, wrapping around you like desert night blankets, carrying you away from cook-offs, from competition, from everything, carrying you gently, softly into quiet darkness where rest begins.